Yo, what's good, YouTube? What's good? It's Stormybman, and I am back. Welcome to another edition of the Friday Night Chop Session with Stormybman, and this is number 74, and we're calling it, Is Respectability Still Important in the Sport of Boxing? For this Friday, August 21st, 2020, and we are here to talk about it, and I'm welcoming everybody that's out there listening. Those are going to catch it on archive or replay as we talk another subject under the lid of the sport of boxing, respectability in the sport. And as I welcome my brother Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens, who's always here as a part of the show with me. How you doing this evening, Reggie?
Man, doing good, OG. Doing real good, man. It's Friday. We got some boxing talk to get underway, and that's what I'm talking about, man. I can't wait for us to get into.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's the thing, man. You know, being able to talk about the sport and covering the athletes, the participants in the sport, but it's also important to talk about what holds the sport up, what keeps it on a foundation. And respectability is definitely one thing that you have to have. You have to have an equilibrium when you're doing and conducting business. And in the sport of boxing, sometimes it seems that boxing takes a hit on the chin, and to get that respect, as Lou Duva used to yell to his fighters from the corner, get that respect, get that respect. Usually when he was yelling that, it was in a moment of where, you know, the battle was intense and it was an exchange or something, and he didn't want his fighter to fall off. He wanted him to stay in the thick of things, and he would yell from the corner, get that respect. So we have to yell from our corners too, Reggie, to get that respect. And in boxing, it's very important. It's integral. So we're here to talk about that this evening. I know sometimes when we get on our subjects, certain people feel a certain kind of way about things, but we can always justify and explain what we mean when we bring that. You know, so it's important. And tonight we'll talk about that. So fighters, you know, they're known to fight for fame, fortune, legacy, popularity, notoriety, you know, but at some point you have to have some integrity. You have to have a plan, so to speak. You have to have something more to shoot for, which is why guys who enter the sport and they're only chasing the sport through an economic means, what they do is shallow, and there's no longevity in that. So when we talk about getting that respectability, you have to be able to have something more to shoot for. I give an example of what I'm talking about here. You know, when the Rumble in the Jungle was made back in 1974, you know, George Foreman and Muhammad Ali were two figures at the top of the sport. But had that fight taken place in America, I don't think it would have had the same type of excitement as it became known for when it was moved to Kinshasa, Zaire, a place of exotic, according to, you know, international standards, means. And so much to the degree that back then they didn't even refer to areas of the continent as we know them today. You know, they would just simply refer to it as the Congo, you know, which is disrespectful. because when you have places of note within a continent, there are sections that are divided up like provinces or states or villages and everything. And you have to acknowledge them for who and what they are and who they are represent. And when Ali was able to go over there, he drew strength from the motherland. And that strength that he drew from that event assisted in him rising to the challenge that was George Foreman. George was considered at that time the most dangerous fighter in the division and had quite easily handled nemesis of Ali in Joe Frazier and Ken Norton, dispatching both of those gentlemen in a couple of rounds. And both of them were known to give Ali the fits and Ali's first defeats. So to be able to go to the motherland and draw from the people and draw from the experience of being in a foreign land that he is indigenous to or had a feeling, a disconnect from family, Ali sought refuge in that, and it was able to help pull him up, which is why you can understand other fighters, such as the fighters from Puerto Rico, the fighters from Mexico, the fighters from other third world nations, Argentina, wherever they come from, the Philippines. These fighters can draw a national sense of pride to keep fighting, to sustain themselves, to have more to fight for than just that bag, to fight for a people who love and support you, and the people who want you to participate in this sport, but know that you're standing on their shoulders. That's what he was able to do. And when a fighter is able to do that, fight for more than just a selfish ideal, he can do something great. Sometimes you feel like you can't go another round. Sometimes you feel like you can't get up off the canvas. Sometimes your jaw is just hurting too much. Your head is hurting too much. But when you hear those people backing you and screaming your name and saying, "You can do it. We love you, brother. Just go on out," you draw that strength. It's very important. And in sport of boxing, nationality means a great deal. And guess what? With that representation properly executed, there's respectability in that, you see, and that's integral. So just wanted to say that and add that piece as we come on in and start beginning this discussion. What do you have to offer, Reggie, on that?
Man, everything about conflict is about respectability. Well, what leads to any sort of battle is about the respect, not always based on what we see military-wise, but when it comes down to the battle amongst men, it's always about respect, and respect is given to the victor, and that's kind of the conquest of any type of war. Going into these type of things is respect, and you vow for the respect of your people, the pride of your people. And pride, like you were saying, pride can get you through anything, especially when it's that level, that sort of pride, and a pride that you ride off the rhythm of your people. And that's what I've been saying, like lately, as we see a lot of these international fighters who come from these other countries. And I'm always been speaking about it more, to where I don't like counting out foreign fighters who come from areas of poverty. They don't have as much. They're not privileges. They don't have the privileges that most Americans have, even poor Americans. These guys sacrifice a whole lot more coming from other places. Their determination seems to be greater at moments. And there's a lot that pushes them when they go back to their countries, the way that they're received, the way, how they're held up amongst their people. Even to this day, you look at many of the foreign legends of many of these poor countries. There's statues and all type of stuff of these legendary fighters who go in there, they give it their all, and they train their asses off. And we we see a lot of that when they come up over here. And the one thing it is about their pride. These guys don't come in here to make a fool of themselves. They don't come in here to look like clowns, because there's something much greater that they represent, and that's the pride of a nation, the pride of a people, and as well as being someone that's positive and a figure that helps to motivate other people. Pride is everything, man, and I wish, and in some cases, it's needed more here in the United States. The fighters who strive in this country are the ones who have pride. We see the Wilder with a high level of pride. We see Spence with a high level of pride. I'll give Sean Porter has a high level of pride because he doesn't go in that ring and play around to bullshit. Those with pride are the ones who manifest this destiny of what they want to do when they want to become great. I've also begun to see this thing with what is the guy, Adrian Broner, and where it shows to how pride can affect you, and I mean pride as far as what you give to the craft. Because when Adrian Broner had this high level of pride and what he represented, a love and passion for the sport, he did great in it. The minute he began to get sidetracked, start losing that pride, getting more into the buffoonish and clownish, coonish shit, is the minute he began to start to slip a whole lot within his sport. And he's starting to open up a lot on that about where he went wrong. Because in the beginning, boxing was life to this guy. The pride, what he represented, what he envisioned in himself. And the minute he lost sight of that, based on money and attention from other people with less pride, who are only showing respect to him based on what he's providing them economically. But there's no pride in people like that. There's just people who are looking to savage off of a guy, and that's where he begins to lose focus. But pride is everything, and I mean the proper type of pride, not this pride is just this falsified artificial level of pride because people are surrounding you. That's what you have to figure out. These people come from these other nations. Those people don't ask for nothing from these people, but they have where they live vicariously through this person, and it represents them as being a powerful people based on what they do inside this ring. But that's all I got on respect. But respect is everything.
Absolutely, man. And again, where I opened up and I spoke and gave the example of Ali, remember, he went over there and was able to basically vicariously pull the vibe of the people over to his own shoulders and find some solace in that, and find something spiritual to fight for more than what he may have done had he fought in the U.S. against Foreman. And, getting back to that point of respectability, in this country, this nation spends so much time trying to place the narrative of being separate that people can't come together for that type of thing. We saw it most recently in the heavyweight championship fight rematch between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. It's unfortunate that we had American citizens celebrating Deontay's loss. Where's the national pride? He was an American champion. Tyson Fury is from the UK. And this is not, we're talking about us against them, meaning our nation against their nation. We're our fighting champion against their fighting champion. And because of the color of the man's skin, they were not prone to support him as the heavyweight champion of the world, only as the black guy. And see, that's why I said, had the Ali Foreman fight taken place on U.S. soil, he may not have been able to channel the focus, determination, and spirit necessary to be victorious in spite of what he was facing in George Foreman. Imagine what Deontay may have felt if the American people truly had gotten behind him in that fight. Remember, at the press conference, You know, there were people booing him. I'm sorry, not at the press conference, at the weigh-in. There were people booing him and everything. And that wasn't all UK fans. There was some US fans out there, you know, and that's despicable because he was our champion. And when I say our, I'm not talking about black folks. I'm talking about the US. He was the US champion. But again, this nation spends so much time putting that narrative about being separate out there that people can't even come together. And socially, politically, we're seeing the fallout of that in other areas. And we don't have to get into that on this show. But speaking about respectability, you have to have a sense of something to hold fast to nationally, pride-wise. And if you can't find it in the stock of the nation that you live in, which is like the U.S., then you do have to tap into a source of that. You support them that support you. You feel the vibe of them that support you. But there is respect in that. And that's where you have to maintain that focus. And once you get to that understanding, then you can shoot for something else, which is what we will lay down before the listeners here. You shoot for legacy. Okay? Fame and fortune is fleeting, but the legacy is enduring. Long after you're gone, your legacy, what do you want people to remember you as having been, how you've lived, what you've accomplished, what is written in the book, so to speak? If that's not important to you, if it has no significance to you whatsoever, you need to vacate. You need to exit immediately. Because like I said, at the end of the day, who's going to look up? Who's going to look you up? Who's going to look at you as someone of notoriety, of what you've accomplished? You see, if you just was out there under the fleeting flame of fame and fortune, that can, like I said, it could be whisked away in the wind. But when you establish that legacy and you put it out there as a thing like, hey, this is what I have hung my heart hat on. And in the case of boxing, your gloves. When you hang them on that hook, what you accomplished, what people will remember, the films that they'll go back and watch over again, the tapes, you know what I mean? How they'll remember the event, where they were, what they were doing. As you've heard us, when we talk on our shows as the three wise men, we reflect on how old we were, what we were doing with our parents, and what meals we ate, and things like that when those big fights took place. Legacy. And we can tell tales, and we can help other people remember what they didn't see, but what they had heard about. And for those who do and have lived through it, to relive it again. And like, man, was that a time? You remember when so-and-so did this and that? Man, we were at that stadium and it had so many people in the arena and this and that and the other. I spilled my Coca-Cola on myself. This and that. People live through that. That's legacy. So when we try to talk about these guys of today and how they need to find something beyond a selfish interest. Yeah, everyone wants to drive a better car, live in a bigger house, and have a fatter bank account. That's the dream of everyone, right? But when you're doing this and you're getting punched in the face and head for a living and in the body, you have to have more to shoot for. And it begins with respectability. You respect the sport. You respect who participates in the sport, and you have some damn respect for yourself as you go out there, because that is what's going to drive at the end of the day. So just wanted to say that bit on that. What do you think, Reggie, about extending that part as far as legacy wise?
Oh, absolutely, man. It was some some profound shit that came from an MMA fighter, a young MMA fighter. What's his name? Israel Adesanya was the guy. And in a post-fight conference, and a reporter was asking him about when does he expect to get his next payday? His, bringing up that money talk. And the dude shut that crap down quickly. And his thing was, my focus ain't the money. My focus is legacy. It's legacy over money. With legacy, the money comes with it. So why chase it? And he has a dream. He has a vision of where he wants to be. He wants to supplant himself within the sport because legends never die. And that's the one thing you come in here for. And especially in the long run, legends are always profitable. Legacy has long-lasting results behind it for the positive. We see the marks Tyson them have made in the sport, and that's what keeps them as viable people to where they can make money off of their names. Creating a name is everything. We see Jordan be able to create the legacy off his brand. It ain't just because his name is Jordan and it's blah, blah, blah. It's about what the guy did on that court. It's about the legend that he created for his own sake. Same thing with Kobe. There's much greater things that come when you plan things out. You put your best foot forward, and money will come with it. Whether that money comes quick or it comes slow. Same thing we watched Floyd do. Before Floyd became this, everybody just looks at him as the billion-dollar man in the sport. It took a while for this to happen. And it took from Floyd to dedicate himself, put the hard work. The money comes along with it. Because on the side of things, we deal with a country that lacks real patriotism, lacks respect, but they wanted to go out there and see the guy lose. But you're dealing with a guy who has a better foot forward in what he plans for himself, and that's to become a legend in the game. And when you have those type of thoughts, those type of plans, and the way you're going about dedicating yourself to the craft, you're gonna outwill everything that is out there. And the will of people who look for legacy, it keeps them into where they become these impenetrable forces within the game. We see the same thing with the Alis. All the greats you think about is about what mark they was going to leave within this game. And it's everything. Where you want to be a legend in the work you do, a legend on the field, wherever you at, man. But the minute you shift away from that, money becomes the focus. Is the way you get sidetracked and lost on everything. And I don't care what field of things you in. You can be a street cat. Man, you get sidetracked from what your vision is. The minute this shit goes short and you become forgotten about, you become a faded memory very, very quick. Memories of legends don't never fade away. They never fade away. We still talking about cats from the 1800s in this sport, late 1800s, who left a mark that can never, ever be erased. I don't care how much you try to change books, you can't get rid of legendary people who came in here with a cause, with a purpose, and that purpose was to leave a mark. And along with that legacy came the money versus them going backwards. But that's all I got on that one, OG.
Yes, sir. And, like for an example, what you just spoke last night on the Three Wise Men of Boxing, Kurt and I were reminiscing on the amazing moment in the fight between Jack Johnson and James Stanley Ketchel. It's like when he knocked dude out, it's like we were laughing about it, and it's like we had the clip on there. And again, how many years ago was that? 100 years ago. You talking about matches where guys were, at the pioneers of the sport pretty much, but they accomplished great things. And you still talk about them today because that we have it as history, but to be able to pass it down and have discussions on it and to impart that on fresh ears, you know what I'm saying? It's meaningful. And again, you could fight for an economic means, but everybody has their price on a dollar, right? Where you say, okay, I've made XYZ, I'm out, I'm done. But when you're fighting for legacy, dude, that path right there can be infinite. You could go as long as your body can go. You know what I mean? As far as how you hold up, how you are conditioned, how well you've taken care of yourself or preserved yourself. And that's a little more of a sense of grasping beyond what's within reach. The money, it's easy. That's like eating a good meal. Everyone has that favorite family meal, right? And it doesn't have to be at a special holiday time or whatever, but when that meal is cooked, you're like, oh, we having that? Oh, I'm gonna save space. It's like you plan on filling yourself up to that point, and then when you get to that point and you say, oh, my belt is tight, and you unloosen the belt and go for another round, right? It's like, but once you finished, you done. You push the table back. Somebody try to put another plate in front of you. You like, I'm done. Let me go lay down. Let me go stretch out, sit in my easy chair or whatever. You've checked out. There's a limit. And that's how it is with the economic ends of it. That's why a fighter has to find more reasons to do what he does just outside of making that money. Because, yes, you want to feed your family and this and that and raise yourself up out of dire conditions and whatnot. But it's important to have your eye on a real goal, being the best you can be. And in order to do those things, you have to do a little extra work. You have to roll your sleeves up and get busy. You have to train. You have to take care of yourself. You have to keep yourself in prime condition, mentally and physically. It's important. There's a union there. It's not just mentally. And it's not just physically. No matter how much you look in the mirror and you looking at your six pack and you looking at your biceps and all of that. How about checking out what's up here, up inside the old cranium? Because that's where it really matters most. And the more sharper a fighter be conditioned mentally as that, physically, the body will be ready to do what he calls upon it to do. So that's what I have to say about that. And we can drop the mic on that. Another point about respectability, Reggie, I would like to run into next is, what is the pulse of the fans and how does it affect fighters? You see, with that respectability with fans, fans today are real fickle, and they like to go with a winner. Bandwagoners, I call them. That guy, he got 25 knockouts in 27 fights. Oh, I like that guy or whatever. He never lost and this and that. And as soon as he's in a rough go, I don't know, man. Maybe he should hang him up. It's like fair weather people, huh? But as long as somebody is successful in doing something, they knew, right? They knew all the while. I knew it all the time. I've been following him since he was 3-0. Yeah, right. Huh? But they do kind of influence things, whether it's justly or unjustly. So, what is the pulse of the fans and how does it affect fighters? Sometimes these fans of today give fighters a reason to not be their best or do their best. They give them excuses, huh? They create avenues and side lanes for them to fall into instead of facing things head on as a real fighter should do. So what do you have to say about that aspect of things, Reggie, with the pulse of the fans? Because these guys today definitely be checking in on the pulse of the fans, especially with social media and everything,
I think everything is shifted by the base of the fans. And that's, whether you look at it, I don't care if you go to the damn store, you a consumer to a certain store franchise, that store shifts the way it models, the way it sells things based on the behaviors of its customers. So we can look at fans the same way. These fighters have to pay attention to the pulse of it. These promoters have to pay attention to the pulse of fans. But when they're dealing with very fickle fans, these promoters can throw off very fickle ass events. They can do very fickle things when not giving you what you want because they know it's suckers out here who just will buy into anything. But when it comes with the fighters, we deal with fickle fans who get into a situation where they write people off from one loss. And that shit has to change. Like even with the Rolly thing, man, we were coming out about this one. This one I'm gonna relate the Rolly situation to it. Is how bad Rolly looked in this fight with that controversy. The thing was where folks were saying that Rolly, oh, he's trash, he's garbage, he ain't ready. My response to it was, he just got to get back in the lab. And that's the thing. My thing ain't to write the guy off, even though I thought he looked like shit in this fight. His thing is to learn from this shit, get back in the gym, respond to what's being taught to him. He gets back in there, he can look like a much better fighter. But this is kind of the attitude I wish fans had, rather than writing these guys off, because the moment they feel that if fans will begin to turn on them, and when the fans turn on them, they're no longer a viable fighter that people want to watch. That also plays in part to how a promoter decides to fucking run this fighter back, or whether or not to put him on the shelf. Because in the terms of a promoter, he's looking who's going to put butts in them seats. And if he got a fighter that these fans are writing off and he's no longer a profitable guy, they move him to the side. And that's also going to add into more things of that is even wrong with promoters basing things off of that rather than the ranking of this game. But you're dealing with fans who don't know what the hell they want. They don't know what the hell they're watching. They just think everything is about going with the guy who is winning fights. Oh, he got W's. He got all these wins on his column. He's looking like this, because they don't know what the hell they're looking at. All they're looking at is points on a record, and that's about it. They don't know they don't know nothing about the aspect of this game, and I see that through all sports. People who act like they're fans of basketball don't know what the hell the damn crossover is. Don't know what it is. They're just watching, counting numbers, and that's about it. And in boxing, a lot of them ain't doing nothing but counting numbers of wins that these guys have and thinking that's what makes them great. Thinking they're great because they're knocking this guy out, but not knowing what's the talent level of the opponent they're in there with. It's just the fickleness of fans is due to their lack of education, because we do live in a dumbed down society. We know that one for America. And maybe the world is dumbed down in some places, but other places they know what they're watching when it comes to their sports. But some of them just have pride. And they're going to support it. They don't write their fans off the way that we do in America, man. We got some real systemic issues in this damn country when it relates to fans. And like I said, fans are no different than consumers we see who go out shopping and supporting stores or whatever it is. But yeah, it definitely affects. Fickleness of fans definitely affects the fighters, because now fighters become cautious. This is where they have to begin to get into these cherry picking habits. They want to play it safe. They want to guarantee themselves wins. It's the same thing with Canelo. Canelo fears that. Canelo fears facing the defeat, and it's kind of common with athletes you see coming up, especially athletes who've at a very early age has always seen success. They move in this professional realm where they're seeing success. Things are being put in play for them. To suffer a defeat becomes super demoralizing. You hear the stories all the time from a lot of these athletes. When they suffer a loss, they cope with depression. They start to doubt themselves. And a lot of this doubt added into this doubt is the way fans are going to view them. They worry about what people saying about them, what people write about them. And even I hear it in Floyd. I hear it in Floyd's voice. Like today he spoke about dedicating to his father and Al Heyman, but he also put in there about writers. That's always included because they worried about this. They follow the rhythm of how people are speaking about them, how people are viewing them, because it can crush them when they feel that people turn on them. And I think that's the wrong thing. Even like you brought the Wilder situation. It's the wrong thing to want to, and that's why I don't get caught in that Terrence Crawford and Earl Spence shit neither. I'm not knocking neither one of them. But when it comes down to us seeing a fighter from our nation, from our communities, who look like us, represent us, to see them fall, and the first thing people want to do is, oh, look at this motherfucker, oh, he's trash, and man, and that's the wrong way to go about things, because it can also crush a fighter as well. But that's all I got, OG.
Man, you hit some key points there, bro, and I can't lie, you're right on the money with that. And the fans, you know, that especially when they're shallow, you know, they're not invested in the sport like the diehards. And when I talk about the diehards, it's the real people who can talk under the lid of the sport, under the hood, so to speak. You like you said, the stats man. You know, and you always knew this. Like even going back to high school, right? When you follow sports and you was in high school, there was always that one guy who knew all the stats on the players. It don't matter what sport. It could be baseball. It could be football. Basketball. This guy, oh yeah, so and so averaged 22 points a game and this and that. This guy's RBIs was this amount or this or that. It's like that guy. He ran so many touchdowns. He had so many receptions. But they knew the stats, but didn't know the damn sport, man. You know what I'm saying? And they could talk you under the bed on the fact that running the stats, but not really understanding the sport or hold the integrity of the athletes that participated in the sport and things like that. So when you have that in boxing, that's the person that's always talking about the records, the lack of defeats or whatever, or you know, undefeated records and things like that, but not knowing what really makes fights. You know, you hear the expression styles makes fights, right? We hear that for generations. You've heard that. But now, when guys throw that around very casually, they don't even understand what they mean when they say that. You know, it's like they'll throw that out there. Well, styles makes fights, you know, and this and that. But what does that really mean? Really? When you talk about it, you got a guy who's a boxer, you got a guy who's a slugger, you got a guy who's a mover, you got a guy who's a plotter. You know, okay, how does styles make fights? Can you really break that down for me? Aha. Then you begin to really listen, right? And you can hear someone foolishly say stuff like, Terrence Crawford is average. Okay? Really? Really? Is that because you don't like him? Or is that because that's what you really think of the fighter? Okay? Or if someone says something like Sean Porter is just a high energy guy, but he doesn't have, you know, much else or whatever to offer. Really? Really? That's all you have to say about that. See, that's when you know that it's somebody, yeah, they sat there and they've watched and tuned in. They've heard things said, vernacular, with the sport and everything. But then you can understand that they don't really know boxing under the hood. And some of those people, they drive the sport because they are the ones of today that's out here and this and that. And some of us have been a little jaded because we could see the fighters are not, you know, given the same type of effort, or training is hard, or even the training is not as intricate as it may have been to get them to be the best that they could be to perform when the lights go on. So it's like you have these things before you, and just like picking bad batch out of a bushel, you have to know that you sort through and you check and look and you check your goods, and what's, you know, useless and not good for you, you toss it out and you retain what's significant, okay, and what's essential. That's why people like us, when we come on and we talk about this, we talk about it under the hood, because there are levels to this. And we've said that before in some of our shows. There's levels to this, but it's not to like try to put someone else down. It's try to open their minds up to the notion that, man, when you have a sport where you have two individuals competing 1-on-1, mano a mano, as it's always been said in boxing, there is so much there beneath the essence of what you see, because when a person gets to a point where they are challenged, and there's always a line, okay, it's invisible, but it's a line of determination where a person can either give up, or they could press on, or even just rise above that line and become something special. And we've seen it happen in boxing. You know, let's use Evander Holyfield as an example here. Whereas this gentleman, when he fought, no one ever thought of him as being outstanding. They thought of him as being very good because he was technically sound. He put punches together well. He had a great determination. But it wasn't until he moved up into the heavyweight division where in almost practically every fight he fought, someone outweighed him by at least 5 pounds or more. You know what I'm saying? And fighting a duration at having basically a career at the heavyweight division, most of those men bigger, stronger, some of them heavier, some of them even more imposing and things like that. And him being able to rise to occasions and accept those challenges, meet those challenges, exceed those challenges. Those are the things that are uncharted with a fighter. But guess what? Those are the things that are never revealed until that fighter comes to that impasse. When he comes to that impasse and the challenge is thrown down before him, remember, I said some people will tap out. Some people will try to meet that challenge. And in his case, most often, he rose and went beyond that. And I'm just giving him as an example. You know what I mean? There's another fighter, Reggie, your favorite fighter, Lennox Lewis. Same thing. This man, people judged him on his regalness because of how he spoke, coming out of England and Canada and things like that. And that he had a reserve about himself. And so people were like, oh, I don't like that dude. That's that British dude or whatever, But he's in there smacking people around in a manner of which you like to see in the sport of boxing. But because he was from somewhere else, they didn't want to acknowledge it. The man was damn good. And he beat a lot of our other fighters that we thought was really damn good. And here it is. It's like now his career is over. People want to say, oh, yeah, Lennox, he was great. Oh, you say that now, but you were one of those people that was talking about, oh, that guy, he's this and that and putting him down and everything. In the meantime, he just kept winning, making you look bad talking about him, huh? And everybody was talking about, oh, Mike Tyson, wait till Mike Tyson hits him. He's chinny. When he gets in there with Mike gonna knock him out. He beat the crap out of Mike Tyson and people start saying stuff like, oh, if that was the Mike Tyson of 1988, really? 10 years earlier? It's foolish. And you don't want to give the man credit for what he's done. These are the kind of things that I'm talking about, talking under the hood of boxing. Okay? Lennox could have beat Mike Tyson up 10 years earlier. Because guess what? He had a stronger constitution as a man. He wasn't all over the place. He wasn't abusing his body with drugs and STD-riddled sex and all of that stuff. He was building his brand block by block by block. And when he got to the top, he reigned. Huh? He wasn't discarded or throwing himself down or throwing himself in prison. He was out there meeting challenges, beating people. And when people beat him, he rematched them and come back and whoop their ass. Huh? That's what it's defined by. You have to do it in the ring. Your reputation can't fight for you. Huh? Your reputation, I ain't never seen a reputation go out there and take a punch on the chin. But I seen fighters who've had reputations go out there and take punches on the chin. And you know what? The chin often gives out. What do you got to offer on that, Reggie?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to get to that point where the people bring up the Tyson wasn't himself during that fight. And I always bring up the point about Tyson and them turning that fight down. Tyson ducked the shit out of Lennox Lewis. And a lot of people, I don't know how that information is still hidden, but Lennox in recent like interviews and documentaries to speak on, but I had heard about this years ago. I don't know if it was I don't know if it was one of them old historians when they sit down and have these talks, because everybody used to think I was crazy when we get to talking boxing, like as a teenager and stuff. And I always told people, man, Lennox Lewis the best heavyweight out there. Everybody was riding the Tyson wave. Like I said, I didn't like Tyson because he was painted as the baddest man on the planet. I thought the baddest people on the planet was cats in my neighborhood. So that's the one reason I didn't like him. So I always, Lennox was bad from the first time I saw him. One of my older cousins used to gamble, come by the house, looking to see if Lennox, this one Lennox had a little ducktail when he had a flat top. So he was very young in his career before the Oliver McCall fights and all that. But he was speaking about, because he's always like, my cousin first thing about Lennox was like, man, this dude bad, man. This dude can, he can punch with either hand, you know, something about Lennox and fight out a soft part, this and that. He was just equally balanced with his power in both hands. And this dude was just real fluid. I guess my cousin knew about him from the Olympics, so he's my older cousin. And I've just been following him ever since, because when I watched this fight, like, man, this dude is bad. And I was like looking like maybe he'll whoop Mike Tyson ass or something. So it came down to that. But I think as a teenager or whatnot, or it might have been in my early age of high school, where I was hearing that talk about Tyson and them turning down the Lennox Lewis fight. And now it's starting to become more readily available. So when people use that Tyson would have fought the guy 10 years ago talk, I debunk it. But for a while, it was hard to debunk it until now you're starting to hear it in these interviews. Even the same thing with Holyfield. It's like, man, you have these guys who are just super resilient, and a reputation doesn't mean shit. And sometimes not having a reputation for a person that just has a strong ass will, sometimes that does nothing but motivate them. To count someone out sometimes is the best thing, because for one, they're not drinking that Kool-Aid, not buying into it, falling off a little bit. They have something to use as a motivator, and that's other people doubting someone that believes in themselves. And I think it's been the greatest thing. I can't imagine what these guys would have turned to if they had become the stars and become the accepted. Fate made them better. While it turned on Mike Tyson, all the praise and everything he got, it turned on him, and it flipped him, and you know, he started to regress because of like you said, fame and all that stuff is fleeting. And that's absolutely what happened. These guys are just chasing it. Oh, this is the guy y'all talking about, the best. That's what we going after. And then in the other shit, man, this is other, like, the more I start hearing these stories and learning about, like, who I consider my favorite fighter. That's why I say today, even in I don't have favorites, but even with current fighters, I don't got no favorite fighter in current times. I have fighters I respect the hell out of. I respect all fighters, because to step in that ring, do this shit for a living, you got to be a badass motherfucker. I don't care if you what people label as bums or whatnot, which I don't use that term, but it takes a lot of heart to get in there and do that. But when it came down to when he came out the Olympics or whatever, I forget what he was talking about. I think it was the Olympics, or when he won like a high-level amateur tournament, and everybody was like, oh, you only won because this guy Tyson. And the first thing came out of Lennox Lewis' mouth to his trainer, we got to go find this guy Mike Tyson. And that shit right there just shows who these guys are. It just shows who the hell these guys are. And even with Holyfield, the way he stood up to Tyson, knowing what Tyson's reputation was back then. And then when they met in that ring, for both of these guys, when they met Tyson in that ring, you seen what Tyson's fate was inside the ring against some other super elite guys at that time. But man, great shit.
And let me go to the chat for a second. We got Marta Machine out there. Welcome, Marta Machine. Appreciate you. He's asking Reggie, he says, what year did Tyson duck Lennox Lewis, sir? Well, Marta Machine, I will tell you. It was in March of 1996 when Mike Tyson defeated Frank Bruno for the second time to take his WBC heavyweight championship title away from Bruno. And Tyson became a two-time heavyweight champion at that time. And that's the only time that Tyson would ever win another championship. Now, he was awarded the WBA championship in his next match against, what was his name? Bruce Seldon. Okay. But he had vacated the WBC because, dun, 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 Lennox Lewis was the #1 contender, and the WBC had mandated Mike Tyson defend against Lennox Lewis and not unify against Bruce Seldon. So Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet, decided to vacate the WBC title and fight an easier opposition in Bruce Seldon, and so history was made. Am I clear on that, Reggie?
Absolutely.
Martin Racine, appreciate you, bro. But that is the history lesson for this moment, because that's very factual, sir. Very factual. So Mike Tyson did duck Lennox Lewis back then. Okay? So, while we wait for Mars' response in the chat, he may respond or he may thumb us down or something like that, as people have been known to do when they get set straight with facts. But let's move on. Reggie, you had something that you wanted to speak on for the congressional acts in boxing and moving toward having something done to get some more order in the sport. Would you want to open that up right now and go into that conversation? I still have some other points, but I wanted to get what you had in there too.
Oh, hell yeah, man. I would get on that, because I've been just looking at like everything coming up out of the sport, that judging that came out of that kind of riled me up. Seeing these BS fights coming out of this Top Rank thing, and also not just how whack the fights are, but seeing how many fighters are coming out failing drug tests, not being put on by the drug testing agencies that are supposed to be out there, but they're being caught by these commissions. And this is why some people are avoiding fighting here in Nevada. And also you hear what happened in that fight, along with the bad judging for that Rolly Romero fight and that Jackson Moran's fight, is the fact that they fought for a title. There was no drug testing conducted during that event. You're seeing what is happening with the Canelo issue. Canelo allowed to avoid particular dangers within the sport. Label him as a franchise tag fighter. He can throw away a belt, be thrown right back into the rankings once again by the same faulty commission out of headquarters in Mexico, Suleiman's company. Seeing that, then you also seeing him selecting a fight once a belt becomes vacated, him giving that mandatory spot, but also the opponent that he's going to fight at 168. How was this dude even positioned in a mandatory spot? So was you trying to set up a soft, cushiony next opponent for David Benavidez once again? Because the last I remember from Avi Yildirim was the fact that after the Darrell fight, he lost the fight and he failed a drug test in the fight. And then coming out the investigation wasn't to take another sample from the guy, but to run some BS investigation, ask questions of people, and then say, oh, yeah, it was accidental. He didn't intentionally do this, blah, blah, blah. You're back to mandatory. But then you fine him. So why is the guy facing a fine if he did nothing intentional? So then we move on from that. So now they put this fight on. Now you have a damn app network telling the fighter who the hell he ain't gonna fight. So now you got a conflict between this fighter, between the sanctioning body, and whoever the hell else. There is no control within the sport. Too many people have too many powers within this game, and they're all competing with each other. They're all in conflict. We don't get fights because the networks have now become a powerful interferencing mechanism in the sport. It's another roadblock in the sport. All this shit is crap, and it needs to be broken down and taken away. These belts have no value to them. You're seeing fighters who are underdeveloped fighting for titles based on their social media popularity being thrown in there. Titles being made up, giving people with the most Europeanized Nordic ancestry Mayan type titles. This dude just creating all type of shit. You have so many of these weight divisions. There are way too many weight divisions in this damn sport. None of these divisions make any goddamn sense. But along with each of these divisions come about 3 different tiers of a damn title, in which these fighters have to pay for these belts Also, something coming out about how these fighters are paid, and I want to just read what Earl Spence put in there recently related to that. Let me go back to that shit. So Earl Spence says, got to give your coach a 1099. He says he works for you. Laugh out loud. He says after you pay the IRS and your coach, that's like 70% gone. He says I hear from some people they coaches take 20%, and he says that's some bullish. He says damn, it's still fighters out here giving away 33% of their fight checks. He says that's wild and it's criminal. So even you got a fighter speaking about the criminality of this damn sport, where everybody is allowed to come in here and pimp these fighters. And like a lot of old fighters, they will speak about this relationship between themselves, the promoter, sanction body. It's a pimp versus hoe type mentality. And it's sad to see the true warriors being pimped by a bunch of clowns who really perform like a bunch of pimps. And now I don't understand how trophy companies, meaning sanctioning bodies, come in here and they get a piece. What's the real fucking value of a damn belt? And even Frank Warren, it was crazy because Frank Warren started to get on this, and he spoke about this being true. Don't nobody come to these damn events to watch for a belt. And I think Frank Warren stole that shit from me, but it's true. Nobody comes to none of these damn fights to watch a belt be put around anybody's waist. Don't nobody really go to the damn NBA finals. The NBA finals will be the finals without a fucking NBA finals trophy. The NFL championship game will be the NFL championship game without a ring, without a damn trophy. And I best believe if the WBC was in the NFL or the NBA trying to charge them for a trophy, they'll be booted over the damn stadium. But they can come into the sport and do this type of crap and take money from people on all levels. The only people should deserve a fighter's check is his trainer. A portion of it, not a percentage of it. But all this other crap that goes on, then you're going to tell the fighter who they can fight. Then once a person puts themselves in position, just based on you not liking them, they get skipped over. Now they're going to fight this guy. It's like, this shit is crazy. All this shit is chaotic. And like I was saying, this game needs to be broken down to where they take away all these belts. They make these organizations give a purpose as to why they function the way they function. And if not, keep them out of America. There could be international trade agreements, and that's always the way it works. Companies that do business across borders, they have to abide by regulations, international regulations, which is done through Congress and stuff. You hear about it when Boeing and Airbus had their battles over how they operated and crap. But this thing needs to be taken away from these dudes. A lot of these sanctioning bodies ain't headquartered in this country. And that's where you have a conflict, especially the WBC. They're giving all sorts of waivers to folks out of where they're headquartered at. Those guys can get popped hot on drugs. What do? Raise the threshold up. So now they can start hiding the stuff. And when the stuff ain't completely out, if it's low enough, it's okay. They ate some contaminated meat. Oh, maybe something got rubbed on them. Maybe something was contaminated in the supplement bottle. The shit shouldn't be in their system. So you now breaking all type of rules, prancing around, acting phony about being some goddamn clean program. Then you deal with the whole racial disparities that goes on with the WBC. And it's clear as goddamn day. And we see the favorable behaviors of the WBC based on people over ethnicity and all that shit. That shit needs to be gone. They ain't from this country. Get them out. Let these organizations start running and controlling rankings based on where they operate regionally. Then they need to start bringing the sport to a finality where we have a conclusion. Every single sport out there has a beginning and an end to its season. And boxing can operate that same goddamn way. Start making these damn belts as representing certain conferences or certain regions of the world. Then these champions of a certain region of the world, being their international champion over here, they start meeting in tournaments to defining who is the man. One face, what Wilder say? One face, one champion, whatever he says, but that's absolutely
one face, one name, one champion.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what this game needs, and that can be done easily. And like Ali said, without federal reform, you really begin to make the sport irrelevant in the eyes of fans, and we're already seeing that. You make it, you create so much damage to where it's unrepairable. Like, people are not captivated about boxing, and we're seeing the captivation being lost by the bull crap that ESPN was pulling on. Put it on with a bunch of dirty fighters who we already seeing coming out. They have about 5 different fighters failed on drug tests, and they had 2 of them who have fought multiple times. And that shit got to end, man. This sport has to be cleaned up. If a sport doesn't have any type of structure, organization, it doesn't function like a well-oiled machine, people only come around once in a while. And people tend to only want to come around when they see what's supposed to be like the stars meeting each other. When the big names meet, people will come around. But you have other guys that are developing themselves that look good. Back in the days when we had, what was it, like Tuesday night boxing, watching the development of fighters. People paid attention to what was coming out the Olympic classes. You don't get that anymore because this game is all over the place, and it's just about people coming in here to make money off the backs of people who come from underprivileged backgrounds, who are striving and looking to get themselves out of conditions that they come from. But they're only being used as tools, and it's the biggest fucking slave farm you ever seen with how the way boxing operates. And that shit needs to be looked under the microscope and placed a bigger look on, because what they did with the Ali Act wasn't enough. They should have had a continuation of what was going on with that, because all that is allowed is for the sanctioning bodies to make up for what they took away from promoters being able to do. And it's nasty, man. It's nasty, and it has to be broken away, man.
How about this idea too, Reggie? It's like the only one that should get money out of the fighter's purse should be the trainer. The promoter and manager, if there is those entities involved in a particular fighter's career, their money should be made out of the event, the venue, you know, and not for the huge percentage that they have of that 33% crap. It should be a smaller percentage than that, but that's where it should come, out of the general gate and stuff like that. It's like that would force them to put on better matches, that would and actually do their jobs when it comes to promoting and managing. Okay, and guess what? When they do piss poor job of that, the money won't show at that end of it. But the trainer would get, you know, something out of the fighter's actual purse because he was there in the camp working with him or whatever, and training, getting him prepped and stuff like that, and the value that he has in the corner. And also the flexibility of a fighter being able to negotiate percentages, where, like, you know, if you've got one of those trainers that happens to be a person who has a tremendous impact on what's going on with you positively, you could have bonuses, incentives for that. If there's someone who is not working at their optimum for you or whatever, you can actually minimize that. But minimizing wouldn't make as much sense as far as just making a change, you know, because if you were unhappy, you were unhappy. But making certain that managers and promoters get theirs from the gate, you would see a lot better matches, and you will see a lot better venues and things taking place when those guys realize that that's where their money is coming from. What do you think about that?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this thing should be there. There needs to be more emphasis on making the damn promoters and the work off incentives, making them hustle. I don't think nobody else should touch a fighter's check but his damn trainer. Yeah. Nobody. And I'm like, none of this. The thing that bugs me is the fact that you're paying for a damn belt. Like.
Oh, that's the most ridiculous thing. And you see, Floyd got real smart on that quick, didn't he?
It makes sense.
The belts that he began to bring into the ring with him when he switched from Pretty Boy Floyd to Money Mayweather were the belts that he had won in previous matches or whatever. But he didn't have a belt on the line. He had himself on the line. You know what I mean? Which, again, when you talk about incentive-laden opportunity, he knew that, which is why he fought at a certain level. He understood what he stood to lose, so he was primed to go at all times. And even when he went up to 154 and he won a belt there, he immediately vacated that belt. But when he fought again, he had a green belt because that's a belt. You know, fighters get their belts. It's there. You get mailed one, right? And that's yours to keep as your trophy in your cabinet at home or whatever. But when he would come to the ring and fight, he'd have all those guys bringing the belts he previously won in the divisions, different divisions and weight classes. And he was a champion because he never lost in the ring. So Floyd was very smart. He avoided all of that crap.
Yeah, and that's the side that's brilliant about him. But I also like what I seen. One of the it was that Asian guy when he fought what was his name, Monster Inoue, where he fought Nonair, and they brought a belt. Man, they tried to put a belt around the guy. Put that. I don't know if he dropped it or he pushed the shit away.
No, he shook his head. The cameras happened to be right on him at that moment when the guy came over and presented the belt to him like this. He was like, no, not that. He waved his hand like,
Yeah, absolutely, man. And that was the most amazing shit I've seen. Is like, F these belts. You ain't about to put this stuff around me. Have me representing your organization. Then you try to wrap your name around me and prop yourself up. But I just don't understand how these, like, WBC and all them wants to, they try to get ahead of the game. And that's kind of like, even like when I just always bring this up, like, I don't listen to a lot of commentators. I don't watch sport network shows. All I care about, if I want to see a score on something, that's about it. Because I hate listening to those commentators be so hypercritical of the athletes who help create a job that derives off the work they do, but you speak negatively about these guys to prop yourself up to being ahead of the sport. And that's the crappiness, and I see that with the WBC. WBC is trying to overshadow these fighters, prop up their bullcrap trophy, being the bullcrap green belt, ahead of the fighter. It ain't about the damn belt. It is about the fighter. And it's time for the fighters to see exactly what Mauricio is doing. He's trying to become a bigger star than what some of these fighters are. He's trying to make the organization a bigger name than what the name of these fighters are. And for a young fighter who doesn't know what they're looking at, they think they need to have these belts, but they need to pay attention to the fans. And also what Frank Warren said, don't no fans come to a goddamn event to look for a goddamn trophy. A lot of people know people who are champions. A lot of people don't know what these damn belts are, but you know great champions when you see them. A lot of these older champions didn't fight for all these damn whack ass titles we see out here now. And I hope they wasn't charging the old champions to wear them damn belts. I hope it was the opposite way around. Like, promoters ought to be paying the fees on the damn belt. And then also the other thing, what is the damn function of a goddamn sanctioning body? What are they sanctioning? Are they paying for anything? What's the purpose of these fees? And I think this should be a public hearing in front of the U.S. Senate for the fans to listen to. What's the purpose? I want to hear them being grilled. So fight fans have a better understanding of what's the purpose of these organizations, because we just get brought in here and presented with some shit. What I see with the sanctioning bodies and a lot with boxing and the way boxing is structured, it reminds me of when I worked for, like, people work for companies, and companies introduce a product they want you to sell, and they don't give you any they don't give you any kind of details of what the damn the product is. They just want you to sell it, make up a bunch of BS, and that's exactly what's going on. And I've always been resistant to shit like that. A job couldn't get me out there to sell some ish and not tell me what the hell it is, and I'm just supposed to make it up and then get a counter question from a damn customer, something to look like a damn fool. Like, nah, ain't about to do that. So I think they need to be grilled. All of them. Put in front of these senators. Let these senators grill them. As to what's the purpose of charging these fees. What's the purpose of all these different labels of a champion, a gold, a silver, a diamond? You know what none of that shit means. Like, when I used to be a kid, and I used to look up on, we used to have these Encyclopedia Britannicas. And I used to always look into, like, certain subjects. I always been in that aviation shit, and I look into boxing as well. And I used to know what the different organizations was, but I come into this shit now when I start finding content here on the internet, and I begin to hear people get more in depth and detailed on these belts and the different tiers of it. I'm like, what the fuck does all this shit mean? What's the purpose of it? What's the purpose of having different champions in the damn same division, and then these same champions who hold the belts aren't forced to fight each other? So then you get rid of these damn belts, and it's just one face in that division. Like, I mean, this shit is the most idiotic shit I've seen. And these fighters don't want to challenge it, because the minute they try to challenge it is the minute they get put on the shelf, they get pushed to the side, because everybody's in cahoots. These promoters are in cahoots. These damn managers are in cahoots. These sanctioning bodies are in cahoots. That's why certain promoters can go and talk to a damn Mauricio Suleiman, because they got a good relationship, pass him some money, and get a fighter bumped up in the damn rankings and get somebody removed. That shit got to be drawn into question. And I wish these fighters would be more fighters would do what Earl is speaking about, how criminal shit is in the game, and they begin to be starting to stand up. But it shouldn't be to where a network gonna tell you what fights you're not gonna fight, but I'm ranked to this position, or I'm being allowed to jump. Like, it's gonna be created too many conflicts, and ultimately these conflicts are what's going to destroy this damn sport. It's gonna water it down. I won't say it destroys it, but it's gonna water this game down too much.
And that's like, to go more into what you've spoken about already, this situation where David Benavidez lost his belt on the scales, right? So in swoops Canelo right away, right? Where he wants to fight for that belt now, but he didn't want to fight David Benavidez for the belt, but he wants to fight someone else for the vacant belt, and someone at his picking and selecting. And the WBC is pretty much willing to cooperate with him like that, until they start hearing, the backlash from people like ourselves. Is like, man, this is corrupt as hell. First of all, who is Canelo to say, I'm not going to fight any more Mexican fighters? It's 100,000 Mexicans out there fighting in the sport of boxing. Okay? And for you to try to sit up and say you're not going to fight any of them is hypocritical. It's like, also, it's a biasness, and it's a biasness from the wrong angle. People are in this sport to try to make a living and everything, but who are you to dictate who can fight and who can't? And when a sanctioning body is looking to bend over backwards extra for someone like Canelo, giving him franchise statuses and making up belts for him, and making up rules for him, and making up weight classes and catch weight divisions for him, and also, let's not forget this, modifying doping for him because of the clenbuterol crap that they tell him, oh, he can have a certain amount of it in his blood because he's getting it from this. Get out of here with all of that stuff. Why are they making all these provisions for a guy like that? And even the Mexican greats from the sport despise this dude, because it's like they realize, man, he's not earning anything. He's being handed everything. What is it he got? Is he got royal blood in him or something? It's like they are just making provision after provision. And Benavidez should be kicking himself for not being disciplined enough to get on those scales and make the weight and fight the fight he was supposed to fight. But not just that, but this whole thing about Canelo, like, you see how he's acting now, want to move in to try to capture another title at that weight class, where there are formidable fighters for him at that weight class that he should be fighting, and he's avoiding those guys. So it's like Benavidez should be very angry. But again, there's that national thing where they're going to always show each other some kind of semblance of respect or whatever, even if they say things in the press that they don't like the guy, this or that. But it should go in a total different direction simply because of the provisions that's been made for a fighter like Canelo. What are your thoughts on that, Reggie?
Man, I hate that shit. I hate it. Like, how's anybody giving any provisions? And this is where ranking becomes a big thing for me. This is almost like like a sport with a structure, almost like the damn college system, to where you win a championship one year, but now you stay out the championship to I can't even make sense of that shit. And I was trying to think of a situation. You the champion and you want to keep playing the goddamn that team the Harlem Globetrotters keep bopping on. You get to compete in the bowl games. You get to face these guys every single year without jumping to the actual kind of contest to prove who's the best, and that's what they're allowing them to do.
Yeah, it's isn't that, and then that makes the sport more of a novelty than the actual real, blood and guts sport. And it's like you don't want it to become so watered down that people. You remember when people used to look at wrestling and say, "Oh, that's fake." Remember? And boxing always had it over wrestling to be real. But the thing about it is, the thing that about wrestling was it was promoted in a circus type manner. But what was transpiring was, definitely scripted to a degree and things, and they had to work it within a certain framework. With boxing, it was more of, as Larry Merchant once said, the theater of the unexpected, but you still had corruption there. So there was a modification to a degree and a controlling to a degree. However, that being said, the questionable judging of fights, the decisions and outcomes, the sanctioning bodies, foolishness, and now even in this late stage of it, of how they create more belts and statuses for fighters, they've done that to a degree that the sport is no longer respected by the common person. They're like, man, what is this guy? You got 4 champions, and what is that? So it's like they've gone too far, and now it's time to reel it back in. But we need to start getting on track with the ways to reel it back in. If you understand where I'm going with that, it's like there's a way to do it, but we all have to be on one accord and press for it. They've let that go because other sports have now passed boxing by as a result of boxing shooting itself in the foot. The wrestling has become more popular. The UFC and MMA has come on par with them. It's like, remember last year when they had a couple of pay-per-view events and they were on the same date and they were talking about moving one on the schedule of the time and everything because the UFC was, it was a bigger fight on UFC than in boxing, and that was the first time you ever see the UFC just overtake boxing with pay-per-view on the same date. You wouldn't have never seen that in the past history of boxing. But now it's become a point where it's questionable because you don't know if the boxing event is going to really measure up to what it should. So you might as well go ahead and tune into the UFC first. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's crazy, man. And we have to push toward that. We have to really, really start pushing toward getting back to the integrity. And as we open the show, talking about the respectability of the sport, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. And that like you I forgot all about that Canelo thing where they delayed the fight for a damn UFC event. It's like, and it just shows, and it's the fighter we're talking about. He was a guy fighting tonight. It was a Canelo fight, the so-called biggest star in boxing.
Yeah.
But they with his actions have watered the sport down. Boxing is supposed to be viewed as a real warrior, like you said, blood and gut type sport, but people aren't seeing that. They aren't viewing fighters as that. This is why you can create a lane for these exhibition type fights to be carried out. You can create a lane for kind of the well past their prime, fighters that are in their 50s coming out of retirement fighting each other because they have watered down, taking the luster about the damn game. to where people will watch any goddamn thing thrown out there. Now you see one of the damn former boxers who's a promoter and shit coming out of retirement to get involved in this type of crap because they've crapped on this game so bad that they've created lanes and people just want to be entertained. But boxing should not be relegated to this. It's supposed to be where there's passion and pride taken into this game. You're just not seeing it, and it's based on the structures. The structures have allowed this, and that's the same thing with when the NBA ain't always been what it is. The NFL ain't always been what it is. They had to clean up the structure of those industries in order to get them back on the right track, and that's why today, because they realized what happened in their past when they were kind of like failing sports industries, is once they clean that shit up, now everything that matters with them in sport is about the shield. People do anything that they think will damage that shield, they're putting you out for a while. They'll make you sit on the side, suspend you, make you think about it to where you either appreciate it or you decide to pack your bags up and get up out of it. And that's what has to happen to boxing. And I think Congress has to get involved. Protect the shield, man. Put honor back into this goddamn fight game. And then when you see that, the fans start taking honor and they start taking pride in this stuff. But I want to see it happen because this is a sport I like, man. And if anything, I always want to be a fucking boxer. I think I should have been a boxer. And that's why I respect these guys. I respect fighters to the highest extent. I don't care what level they at.
Well, you know, Don King was once considered the P.T. Barnum of boxing, right? Because he could put on shows. And that's the thing that was kind of lost on it. You know, Don King made himself into a figurehead in the sport. But what people fail to realize, because they considered his gift of gab and how he talked, right? And his hair and all of that, where he made a persona for himself. But the one thing he did, Reggie, he put on the best events. He put on the best boxing that the sport had to offer. And you can't take that away from him. Yeah, you got distracted with the show. But what you got in return for your money was a show. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's lost on him. When you have a guy like Ed Hearn today in Matchroom putting on a match with YouTubers fighting each other and make that a bigger thing than the actual boxing match, you're disrespecting the sport, man. That's why a guy like Hearn should, in Matchroom, people should really shun them and push them to the side because they're feeding you crap, okay? Who the hell want to see Logan Paul? I want to see Canelo fighting Demetrius Andrade. I want to see him fighting Billy Joe Saunders. I want to see real matches. They're on the same promotional group. Why are they not fighting each other? Huh? You're going to put on this Logan Paul and this other dude and stuff and make it a main event and everything? What? Don King wouldn't have done nothing like that. And in this day and age, even if he had money to be made off of that, he would find a way to make it happen, but it wouldn't take precedent over the sport. He would make it exactly what it is. A miniature event or something that would piggyback on the back of something much huger. Okay? Where if there was a box office draw there, that the real participants in the sport would find a way, he would benefit that. He would get that money and make that pot greater. You know what I'm saying? He wouldn't do like what these guys did. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, that's how you know the difference. And this is how you know how the sport is being handled differently. What do you think?
Man, I thought, Don King was brilliant. And it was, there we go. Yeah, Don King was the man. That's why even to this day where I watched these interviews with several of these, and it's mainly the palm skin damn reporters who always want to bring in some damn, some way of trying to tear down Don King. because they don't want to give the credit. They don't want to realize the impacts of Don King. But it's funny, even those who try to paint Don King in the negative light, when you get to talking, when you get them, and this is how you trick them, you get to talk, having them open their mouths about classic fights, more than likely they're going to talk about a Don King fight. But he's absolutely brilliant. You get fighters who people put a tag on of Don King ripping them off. Even they speak positive of Don King. Even they don't, because when they go back and realize it, even if Don King was taking something from them, they wouldn't made a half with any other promoter of what Don King was able to raise for them. And they wouldn't have the names that they have if it wasn't for Don King. We see Bob Arum sitting on all sorts of legendary Hall of Fame damn fighters, and they don't become that until they get away from them. So, I mean, who else can you give credit to ahead of Don King? There's no one out there. And Al Heyman has taken that torch, another person who looks like Don King, because they have the true visions of what the sport should look like, of what fights should look like. And you ain't gonna get it from no Bob Arum, because that's the ones they want to praise. They want to praise Bob Arum, but he's the biggest crook and snake in the game, and he's kind of set this damn sport backwards, along with others who are like him. But I think he's the other big name that's out there. But he wanted to create a monopoly, and thank God he doesn't have that, because this sport would be straight garbage. And matter of fact, at the time, he kind of did almost have the game monopolized, and he trashed the sport. Sports start to fall to the wayside, and that's where Dana White was able to come along and prop up that UFC. It was all because of what Bob Arum was doing to the sport, sitting back, watering the hell down, along with everything else that was going on in the game. But Don King, man, there's nothing you can say about that guy, because even when you do talk bad about him, like I said, you get people to shift away their focus of wanting to knock down Don King, get them talking about classic fights. Them classic fights, go have Don King sitting right behind the scenes on putting that shit together. But that's all I got.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mr. King is, he's up in age now, and he's pulling back, because he still has a couple of things happening from time to time, but he's not as active as he was, and that's understandable because of, his age and everything. And I don't believe his son, Carl, could take over as he did with things, even though Carl knows a lot and was there for a lot. What I wanted to go to another point I had down here about how big a role does clout chasing play in the sport today, especially with social media now and everything. And the irony of the fact is the clout chasing isn't even about getting a match made, Reggie. It's actually like, to me, and tell me if I'm wrong in this, excuse me, clout chasing today seemingly is coming across as just keeping a guy's name relevant and out there in front of the public's eye and everything. But these guys that are name dropping, threatening and all of that, but not signing contracts, it's like it's only serving a purpose of self-promotion. And what is the role that is playing today to you? Because to me, it seems to be a whole hell of a lot of that going on.
I think it comes out of the world from like younger folks, but I think it's always been there. You use somebody's name, talk-ish to try to prop yourself up. But a lot of times, clout chasing backfires on you, because at some point you got to face the guy who you trying to use their name to prop yourself up off of. But it's just you doing that hasn't caught the attention and it hasn't blown into the wind the way it needed to. Because once it gets out there and the person you trying to build a name up off of you really puts you up to the challenge, then it's time to get down. Clout chasing, but it only matters when you really trying to get some action. It worked for Jack Johnson, for watching history on that, where he kept chasing these white champions, calling them out. And they trying to play it down like, oh, these black champions ain't up to par with a white guy and blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't until a white promoter put some money up and this dude had no other option but to take it, because he turns it down, he looks like a coward. Now it's just going to start taking from, if people are being called out, that's what the fools want to use your name. Let's make the fight, start getting more vocal, call these dudes out. And you're going to watch a lot of clout chasing backfire on a lot of these guys. Because you got to be about what you talk about. And a lot of that quarantine talk that happened for a lot of these dudes, at some point, that shit's going to be brought back up. And now you got to face these guys. But I don't think, even with people doing that clout chasing stuff, it really ain't doing nothing for their names. Because then on the other side, you can get to where you clout chasing the person you trying to get in the ring with just to get a name up, gain some notoriety, or even dethrone this person. They begin to shut you out. But that's the other bad side. It ain't just on the side of the person clout chasing, trying to get a name. But sometimes you have to call out the bigger names if you really want those fights. It's just bad when you call out a big name and they ready to fight you, and now your whole team is creating stories. Oh, no, he ain't ready, and and that's when that shit goes backwards and it backfires on folks. But I think it is necessary to call people out when you really mean it, when you're really ready to fight these dudes. But otherwise, it'll backfire on you. It'll definitely backfire. We seen AJ, case in point, clout chasing, acting tough, get thrown $50 million for his challenge. And ultimately, and when he tried to pull that crap, it ended up classifying him as a coward. Who turns down $50 million guaranteed? So that's where clout chasing can go backwards. But that's all I got.
You know, we talked about we were going to go in on that. And since we only got like a half hour late, let's definitely save that one for like next week. Because we did talk about that, remember? And yeah, because that we can do half of a show on that, you know, and I think we could save that for next week. But you're right. But I want to like take the focus to a couple of individuals in particular. One is this guy Gary Russell Jr. Okay, and we know that he fights like, you know, annually. And he has a loss on his record. He lost to Vasily Lomachenko. But as of late, he's decided to come out and bring out some history that he's had being around Terrence Bud Crawford. And now people have even taken up the mantra and the call for, hey, face the guy, you know, face the guy, even though they're weight divisions apart and things like that. But I'm going to go in a different direction with this. Instead of like, okay, you want Bud, right? That could be a vendetta grudge match or whatever that they can make at some point. And I believe if both men really have embers that are burning under the surface, that can happen. That's something. It wouldn't take a lot to make that. But why doesn't Gary Russell Jr. want to get a rematch with Vasily Lomachenko and try to get that victory back?
I mean, Gary's a mysterious dude, man, and I don't get nothing about Gary, man. I don't. All that talking he doing, I don't like it. Like, it's entertaining for a lot of people. I don't like none of it. I don't like none of this.
I don't either. But when you know that question, that's a real question I pose. Why you don't want to get Vasily Lomachenko back? Why not?
Because his pride to be hurt to lose to another white fighter. All this tough talk shit will blow up in the wind. And matter of fact, it will ruin the so-called reputation Gary has to lose to another white fighter, especially when people view, you know, kind of him reigning as a champion this long, kind of the black standards when it comes to fighting and all this stuff.
But Reggie, hold on a second though. But he wouldn't be losing to another. He'd be losing to the one who beat him.
Still, he views it as being damaging, especially for all this kind of talk he speaks. I think it'll just play on him. all this tough talk to lose to a Vasily Lomachenko, and then to see one of these younger guys who he's also calling out to come along and beat Vasily, it'll make Gary Russell look like a joke. And he's worried about how people he's worried about the impact and the effect of that. I think that will affect him quite a bit. But that's the fight he should be taking.
Exactly. See, this is what I'm getting at, and I'm glad you said it and I didn't have to say it. So if he's worried about all of that other stuff, he in the wrong business, brother. You understand? Because remember, we've talked about this ad nauseum. We believe that just because you beat a guy one time and you move on with your career as if like, hey, you know, it's like I've been there, done that. No, this is boxing. You might have caught him on a bad night. He might have had a bad hand. You might have just had the upper hand that night. You might have been more motivated than him or whatever. But at the top level of the sport, let's just say at the championship level, you got to do it more than once. You got to do it more than once, man. You know, Staple Singers had a hit song back in the late 70s, and a movie came out. Let's do it again. Huh? Do it again. You got to prove it to me. Huh? And just because you got a decision, the judges may have been corrupt. Hey, we talked about that in the opening of the show. So it's like, if you don't want to really be the best, then you don't fight rematches. You know, I'm a huge fan of rematches because I've seen them turn around. I've seen them go a total different way. Look at the rematch between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. It went a total different way. People didn't see that coming, right? Regardless of what, not trying to get into any controversy or nothing. I'm just using the example of like one fight went one way and the other fight went a total different way. And there have been plenty of other fights like that. Gerald McClellan and Julian Jackson. The first fight was a pretty competitive fight. You know, both guys could punch. They hurt each other and Julian lost. Then he come back for a rematch, which he didn't have to do because Gerald McClellan was a much bigger man than Julian Jackson. But he fought him. And he got iced earlier in the rematch. So it's like, okay, but he did it. He got in there. Sugar Ray Leonard, it took him 8 years to give Tommy a rematch, but they did do it. Why don't Gary Russell Jr. channel those energies and go after that guy? Now, it's too late right now because Vasily got a fight. And this fight with T.O. might be the end of Vasily if T.O. is what a lot of people hope him to be. But I'm just saying there was space and opportunity prior to the deal made for Vasily and T.O. If Gary wants to put on extra pounds and go up and hunt somebody down and everything, it should have been Vasily Lomachenko. Should have been that man, because you know why? Because that man whooped your butt the first time and you needed to come back and try to get yours back from him. The fact that you didn't do it, you hung around fighting these other second-rate fighters and everything, and now you're clout chasing a fighter that's a couple of divisions away, more than a couple of divisions away, but at the same time, the name in the sport, you're trying to discredit and this and that. I mean, come on. If anybody is discredited, it's you, because you should have gone after the guy who put the loss on your record. You just settled with that. You're good. You don't want to get back. You don't want to prove yourself to be a better guy and go out there and say, "Hey man, you got me a little green, but you know, I'm back now and I'm a champ." You know, and I'm going to take it away from you. You don't want to do that. No, you want to go way out in the way outs, because that's what people do when they really have self-hate. And I ain't going to go too deep into that, but that's it. Go after Vasily Lomachenko. Even if he loses to Teofimo, tell him you'll fight him in his comeback fight. Huh? You want to challenge him. A one fight, one catch weight, whatever you got to do to make it happen. Go after that man and get yours back from him. then I'll listen to anything you have to say. But I want to see it happen because this is the type of thing that should be talked about in the sport of boxing. It should be talked about. And when guys don't want to live up to that, I kind of don't want to give them no credit for nothing else. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, man, you're absolutely right, man, because it was like when you hear him create the reasonings behind losing to a facility, it's like you should have ran that shit back.
Yeah.
And right back in there if that's what happened. You were weight drained and you did something about the scale wasn't right and you had to lose weight at the last minute, blah, blah, blah. You need to run that shit back. You should be calling him. Not talking about some damn Olympic training camp shit about you punching Crawford in the mouth. You can't do shit with Crawford. You couldn't do a damn thing with Crawford. Crawford was to meet Gary Russell on the streets, meet him in the ring. He will beat Gary Russell ass all across the ring. I don't care how bad Gary Russell is. Gary Russell is very, high level, very skillful, but he doesn't have nothing to keep Terrence Crawford up off of him. And that's like some serious clout chase because that's all it is. There is no incentive for Terrence Crawford to fight Gary Russell being at that weight he's at, for Gary to have to try to do a Rigondeaux, tried and failed at, in an attempt to prove himself to who? Like, you've been so inactive. So inactive. This shit makes no damn sense. But you'll walk up on people, you'll call out people, but the one person whose name is left out is goddamn Lomachenko. I don't know if Lomachenko got some kind of magical spell over fighters out of Baltimore because the same shit happens with Tank Davis. He'll call everybody out, talk about busting on them and shit like that, but Lomachenko can say something, there's no response. So I don't know what effect this guy has over folks from that region. I'm just joking with that shit, but the two fighters who happen to be from there don't say nothing. They don't dare bring this guy up. Not at all. And I don't know what the hell that's about. But
I don't like it, Reg. I don't like it, man. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because there's work to be done. You know what I mean? There's work to be done. Dude, go in there and get that rematch. Fight that man. If he whoop your ass twice, go sit down somewhere and we don't want to hear nothing else from you. If you defeat him, then you got bragging rights. You got bragging rights. But right now, do it. Huh? Stop talking about Bud Crawford. Get your butt out there and start following Vasily Lomachenko around. He put a loss on your record. Where's your pride at? Huh? Where's your sensibility about wanting to get some pound of flesh back? I keep talking about this. You guys are today the paper freaking champions, man. Paper, tissue paper, wet tissue paper. Huh? Because this is the kind of fight that should be made. Why are you letting him get away? You letting this man walk around. You should be questioning. When they show him on the TV on ESPN, why y'all show his record with no loss? I got a loss from him. Why y'all not showing his loss? I want to fight that guy again, so I want to prove that he can lose, and I want to get him back in there. I want him. I'm going to sit ringside, first row, near his corner, every fight till he fight me again. Where's that kind of stuff? Where's the coming to his press conference and standing up there and grabbing the microphone and saying, hey, this guy and I fought a couple years back and he got me. I want him back now. I want to prove to the world I'm better than him and anybody else he's fought, and let me get in there with him and show you and everybody else, blah, 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 blah. He's not doing that. He talking about another brother that is so far away from him that it doesn't even make sense. But you got people piling on, talking about, yeah, that's the fight. Bud should consider it. Go sit down somewhere. He got unfinished business with Lomachenko. And if he don't want to face Lomachenko again, guess what he is? And you won't hold him accountable for that.
Yeah, and the other thing, man, it's he got other Mexican fighters out there. Where's Burchek in them at? Burchek, Navarrete, you got all those dudes out there that the guy ain't fought. And when he did take his Next, I think his biggest step up after Loma, which was JoJo Diaz, that was a tough fight for Gary. I had that as a close fight. Didn't see Gary fading away in that fight and not blowing JoJo Diaz out. So there's other fighters before you talk about moving up to Crawford that Gary should be facing.
Absolutely.
A lot of them.
There's about 4 fights that he could take. 4. And guess what? Since he only likes to fight annually, that we're talking about 4 years from now that he'll be complete with that process. Because he ain't trying to fight more than once in a year. Huh? But what he doesn't realize is as he gets a year older, the other ones get a year bolder and they get better. Huh? And while he begins to have slippage, they're gonna be ready for him. So he gonna have to make a real type decision here and stop all that foolishness. Again, clout chasing. You got social media and everybody that got a camera and a microphone don't need to use them. Seriously. Go sit your butt down somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And just like you got damn what's his name? Devin Haney been calling for. Why you gotta go up to 147? You bypassing all this other good work to call out somebody way too big for. You got Devin Haney that didn't call him out. But then they said the guy was trying to get too much money. He's trying to pull the Keith Thurman thing, asked for a crazy sum of money. So they was like, go to Al Haymon and see if you can get it. Al Haymon ain't gonna give you that money, so you need to make greater concessions to getting paid off well, fighting this young guy. And Devin Haney is look like he's willing to take a loss if he has to. He's another guy focused on legacy. Because the game ain't about fucking just being an undefeated fighter. Take the challenge of fighting a veteran. You lose to him, it's not that damaging. Face the guy, but you don't hear Gary Russell talk about fighting him. He came off trying to stunt when he was on the show and said they called out this guy and he didn't want it, and talking about who ass he'd be spanking and sparring. I think he even talked about knocking out Bernard Hopkins' son or something like that. So it's the most vocal I've seen Gary, but it's like you got to put the talk into action, and people want to see it. People want to see it, and I don't buy into like how they say he's been the most avoided fighter that's out there. I just don't buy into it. I just don't believe it.
How is he the most avoided fighter and he's barely active? Huh? The only thing that let us know that he alive right now is the fact that he's come out on social media talking so much. Huh? But he ain't been active in the ring like that. It's ridiculous, man. You see people like him come out there like that, all that yapping and flapping. It's just like that little video of them dogs arguing at each other beyond the fence. And just 3 feet away is the opening in the fence, but neither one of them want to go over there by the opening. But they standing. You ever see that little video with the 2 dogs yapping at each other? And that big old gaping opening in the fence right there, but they stand right at each other. It's funny because it's exactly like these fighters, man. They want barricades and walls and everything between them, and then they want to clamor and talk. And I'm going to tell you something else. If you're a good fighter, you ain't got to open your mouth. You ain't got to be talking all the time or whatever, especially if that ain't your thing. If you don't have a gift for gab, just sign contracts and go out there and fight and let your fist do the talking. We don't have to hear you. You don't have to reveal your personality, because when you reveal your personality, that makes people take a second and different look at you as a person and a fighter. And we just want to know you as a fighter because we follow you because of the sport. We follow you because of the sport. We don't follow you because you're a great guy. Huh? Don't nobody give a damn about you. Really. At the end of the day, they want to see you fight. And that's what they want to see. You know? But when you go outside of that, then you make people have a different thought process about you. And that's not always popular. So just, when you don't have the gift of gab, just focus on the ring, please. That's what happens. Salute to D-Style Boxing. I see D-Style out there. He says, what's up, Stormy and Reggie? Man, this dude, he just need to get in the ring. That's all. And like Reggie said, there's about 4 fights that he can take care of in the next couple of years. Let's cut it down from 4 years to 2 and see him fight at least twice a year, taking on all 4 of these dudes. And let's get that done. Let's work on that. Terrence Crawford got other business. And so do you. Stop it. And every time he make a video, I'm going to say something about Lomachenko. Huh? Because Lomachenko owns you. He owns you right now. What you going to do about it? You going to go get him? Go get him. But right now, he owns you. And you talking about other people. That's like a bully in the playground got beat up finally. Then he gonna go beat up somebody smaller or whatever. He can. That's what you do. What, man? Go get the guy who gave you trouble. Go get him. You learned, right? You learn how to get yourself together. You learn how to become better, right? Show us. That's what I got to say about that.
Yeah, and my thing, man, he playing like this gangster role, like this new Devo shit for boxing, and it doesn't add up. It don't add up at all, because even what he pulled with Leo Santa Cruz and walking up on his father, and I thought that really made Leo look like a coward, but not so much of just saying Gary is a gangster, because Gary should be doing that to other fighters, but I don't see Gary doing none of that. I hardly even ever see a Gary Russell appearance at other fights. And if he wants all this smoke with all these people, like you say, he should be sitting ringside. He should be at fights. And it shouldn't be nothing about being cross-promotional, blase, blah. It shouldn't be none of that. It shouldn't be where Gary's already talking about going to the zone, so promotion ain't a thing. Al Heyman doesn't resist fighters going to fight elsewhere. He'll work with that. It ain't like Gary is just like a super A-side fighter. Gary just needs the damn fights. He needs to fight somebody. So he can go fight all these other dudes, the Navaratis, the Burt Checks, the other dudes who are around that region, the Shakur Stevensons. But here he is playing this role, because a lot of fighters, I see them doing this stuff, is to act like they're going to move up in weight, facing somebody bigger like it's a super challenge. So that way, if they do suffer a defeat, they play as if it doesn't look bad, as if they're playing like a badass and they lose somebody within their division and get smoked. They just look like it kind of throws a pie back in their face. And that's what I see with him. I don't see him rolling up on other fighters' fathers. Don't see him at other fighters' post-fight interviews talking shit. He can easily get access to a fight. But you doing this to one of the weakest links in the chain in Leo Santa Cruz, who's surprising the hell out of me to fight Tank Davis, but I ain't buying into that Gary Russell shit. Not none of it. I don't buy into it in any of it. And I doubt that they'll ever run into each other at a fight, because you don't, like I said, you don't see Gary Russell at none of these fights unless it's in the area he's in. But he ain't flying to these other fights. I think he even talks about he don't even pay attention or follow the sport. Like, how you don't pay attention or follow the damn sport? This is something you're in. You should be scouting everything that's out there. But that's why a lot of these guys don't call each other out. Like, I hear that from a lot of fighters. Oh, I don't really watch the sport. I don't watch. That's the fucking problem. How you ain't paying attention to what's on the landscape out here and shit? Like, shit don't make sense to me, man.
Absolutely. But, listen, if he don't pay attention to the sport, then he obviously don't know the dangers of trying to get in there with Bud Crawford, does he? He doesn't know, because he don't follow the sport. There you go. He just answered his own question. Huh? You go chasing dragons and see what happened, huh? Crazy, man. Crazy. D-Style says, you guys see the squirrel style video? Yeah, I saw it, D-Style. I saw the squirrel video. Skinny Kenny says, in the real world, Gary can unify at 130 versus JoJo or Tevin and beat Leo, then can cash out and take a beat down versus Tank at 135 and retire. Listen, he also says, let's be honest, Leo and Abner and Warrington openly and vehemently ducked Gary. We're not talking about the guys that ducked him because the guys that ducked him won't be available. But there's some available guys out there that's ready to hand him something right now. Huh? You got Shakur Stevenson right there. Shakur's right there. He ain't trying to handle nothing or take anything from Shakur Stevenson. And I think Shakur can get him right now. Right now. Prove me wrong. We'd like to see it. Yeah, go ahead and give us your last words, Reggie, and let us know what's going on with you and your channel. And it's been a great conversation this evening. And when we do wrap everything up, I'd like to talk to you a couple minutes before we, in the stream.
Oh yeah, right on, man. But great show, man, and hopefully clout chasing backfires and the rest of this wicked year in 2020, and it ends going on and going on forward. That clout chasing backfires for all fighters, and that these other fools stop getting in the way. Make these fighters fight, man. Fans make these fighters fight. It's just time for people to fight. That's it. That's it. That's the only reason why we want to watch this shit. We want people fighting. That's why they pick up the sport, and not to write these guys off. Not to write them off. Criticize them. Criticism is necessary. Criticism is so necessary. But that writing off shit, nah. Because anything that's deficient in this game, you can go right into a gym, lock yourself in that motherfucker, and learn that shit. And that's the thing. These fighters need to start learning this craft. And also, these fans got to start learning this shit. Just as much as what fighters need to learn, it's a lot of fucking fans who need to learn a whole lot about this goddamn sport of boxing, especially the history of this sport, the history of any sport you're in, that you follow, rather than being a statistician. Like you were saying about, that's what turned me off with baseball. When I used to grow up here in baseball, all you hear is about people talking about ERI or ER, whatever that shit, ER something, batting percentages, rather than actually watching the game. Same with basketball, talking about free throw percentages and blah, blah, blah. No, watch the fucking goddamn game. You get fans now talk about punch stats, and they can look at CompuBox and think that determines who won the fight. Oh, he landed this many more punches than the other guy. That shit ain't what the damn thing is about. Like, learn this goddamn game. So I think fighters need to study, fans need to study, these new age promoters need to study, especially that damn Eddie Hearn needs to study the goddamn sport. They need to study all aspects of the sport in order to bringing this sport to where it needs, because boxing should be the number one damn sport in the world, as well as any combat sport. Because like I said, you can go to a goddamn any type of event, a fight is going to always pull people's focus away from watching what the hell they may have went to go attend. But that's all I got, man. You guys catch me. I got both of my channels, my other channel back up, but like I keep getting strikes on my shit. But
you're a marked man.
It's me, and I ain't gonna stop it because there's certain content I like to put up. I'm gonna keep putting that shit up. But this other one, I didn't get a strike on this one. And it's funny because when I talk about the strikes I got, YouTube mysteriously dropped my shit. But I got just one of them. But I just recently got a what they call that shit, it's a community guidelines violation. So it just stopped me from posting on my main page for a week. But it's up, so that's why you see me uploading videos today, because it dropped right. It went down like 45 minutes before we went on, but that's all it is. But I'm operating on both channels. I'll go live on both channels. I'm pushing my backup channel, and I'll probably push a third channel when the first channel get brought down. But like I said, I don't care. The subscribers that I have, I'm not here for that subscriber shit. I'm here for the content, and that's all it is. The way I speak will always be the spoken with one sub. So I like I say, I enjoy doing this shit. I enjoy talking about the sport. I enjoy listening to this shit more, especially from elders, because that's just me. I listen to people older than me, and I just enjoy sitting back listening to this shit. And if my kids was here, you would hear them talking about, damn, you listening to more of this stupid boxing. So that's just me, man. I love what we've got going here. The content that's being rolled out, and I love it. Even the debates, the conversations, certain shit, I enjoy it as well. And these fighters are paying attention. So I think that's where this whole education, talking with education, plays a part. Because all these top level folks listen to this shit. They may not chat. They may not state anything. You never know if Al Heyman is watching, a top trainer, top network executive. Floyd Mayweather listens to this shit. All these guys. So your voice is being heard. So keep dropping out quality shit, quality content. And like I said, what is it? There's the focus has to be big. And that's what I think with people's focus. And that's why I like subscriber shit don't matter to me, because there's always a world that is out there listening to it. Even if you only got so many subscribers, you got a world that has a possibility of clicking on your shit, because there's over 1 billion people on YouTube using this platform, watching this stuff on here. So just when you're doing this shit, just dream big. Even if you got just one person watching your shit. And I don't know, man. I just like this shit. I can go on and on talking about it. But that's, you guys catch me at Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens 1 and 2. But when you don't see me doing some shit on one page, just know I got a strike.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We need the rebel without a pause, as Public Enemy called it. That's right. And I appreciate you being here with me, man, and helping make this show what it is, because you bring a lot, and I appreciate that. And your thoughts, your content, your position and your stake. I remember back when I started doing In the Eye of the Storm, it was the Odd Fella and then you who were my first guests on the show. And it was at that time when I decided to do that show that I said that when someone presents content, and has a channel, to present that to the people for what you do, because everybody has their little thing, you know what I mean? And you could have followers that listen to you that don't listen to me, and vice versa, and so forth and so on in the community. But the fact that we have, the platform that we do, it makes for the variety. So there's something out there for everyone. And the fact that we collaborate and we can be an extension of things to help the community realize that although this is the sport that we love, there are many different avenues and angles to cover it from. And that's what makes all of this worthwhile. And I'm extremely motivated. And I appreciate you assisting me. And I appreciate everyone that has come out in the chat and have made themselves available here in the chat to make conversation. And even those who are watching and peeping behind the blinds and the bushes. Appreciate y'all too, because you provide the views, but you also provide that little aspect of the unknown. And that unknown, it gets talked about out there, and then it also works its way back to our ears, and we hear what's going on. So we appreciate that as well. So, for my brother, Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens, this is Stormybman saying salute to the community, and we are out of here. You had another great show, and we'll see you next week at the same time. Peace.